Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coffee and Counseling Podcast. Before we begin, just a brief disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not take the place of therapy. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Coffee and Counseling, where we don't spill the tea, but the coffee will be piping hot while we talk about all things counseling. We're your hosts, Rachel Steinhardt
and Stephanie Van Schaick, and today we're going to talk about what the real goal is when we aim for mental health and what that means.
Before we start, we just want to do a quick check-in of our week, and potentially this is actually also kind of, I guess, connected to our topic of just maintaining mental health within the ups and downs of life. But Steph, one high, one low of your week. How is it for you?
Yeah, so I love this idea that Rachel had brought up, and that this is what we're going to be doing moving forward. Is she was saying that in her sessions, she likes to sometimes ask, like, what are a couple highs of this week and what are a couple of lows of this week? So we decided to incorporate it into our session, our episodes, and do that as our weekly check-in. So I was thinking earlier about like what I wanted to say or what my highs and lows were for the week. And I know we're going to stick with one. But I thought about it, and something that was kind of a little over a week ago, I had my oldest cat had his annual vet appointment. And the week leading up, I get really anxious. And it's something that I know that it's just one of my struggles that I have with managing anxiety when it comes to my cats. It just is what it is. And it's going to be something that I think that this topic is going to do well in addressing, because leading up to it, it was anxiety provoking. So that was a bit of a low. It was a bit of a struggle just dealing with that upcoming. However, it led into the high. Everything checked out and he was very healthy. So I'm very grateful for that. But then the next week, it was really lovely to have that off my plate. It's like when we have this heightened period of anxiety and then we are able to have relief from that, it almost renews a sense of gratitude for just a basic lackluster day. And then this past weekend, which was a weekend after it, I was able to just have it more low key. I was really excited, and this is part of my high too. And it's so little, but it was a nice time. I had some rotting bananas off to the side, and I just decided on a whim, which I don't do. I'm not a very spontaneous person, but I'm like, I'm going to make banana bread. And I just did it for the sake. Yeah, it was so yummy. But
I love that for you.
Thank you. It was so yummy, and it was so nice to bake without necessarily an intention. Most of the time, if I'm cooking or baking, it's for something, which I love too, and I enjoy doing. But just like, hey, I'm gonna make this because I can, and I have a calm day.
Just like bake for the act and the art of baking or cooking. It's like can be really therapeutic.
Yeah, and then you have yummy banana bread for a couple days, which is so super awesome. What about you, Rachel? What about your high and low for the week?
So probably my low, and I don't know if anyone can hear in my voice, is I am feeling pretty icky. I've actually been sick for a while, but this week has been particularly rough. So I've just been having a hard time not only dealing with like the physical part of it, but the mental realization of how much it's slowing me down. So just dealing with that has been kind of rough. But actually, Steph, haven't even told you this. My high was that my mom just surprised me and walked into my house. My mom does not live in Florida. And for anyone that doesn't know me, she is my literal best friend. So she walked through the door, and I think it took me a moment to process what was happening. And it's so funny because my husband recorded it, and the first 2 seconds, I'm just like, why? And then once my brain processed that she was there, I just started bawling my eyes out. And like literally just standing in her arms. And it was so funny because my husband kept saying, every mommy needs their mommy.
Oh,
and I was like, that's so true. I really wanted and needed my mom. I missed her so much. But she just kept looking at me like, girl, are you okay?
like, get it together, okay?
I was so overwhelmed. She's like, pull it together, Rachel.
That sounds
But it was really special to just get to spend time with her. And I think that what was really cool was this is the first time that she's come to visit, as first of all with a surprise, and second of all that my kids have enough of an awareness and consciousness and old enough to understand what was happening.
Mm.
So she like surprised them picking them up from school. And they were just on cloud nine. It was the cutest thing. And I think she wasn't expecting that either, that they understood so much that she was there.
Mhm.
So it was just very, very special to have that quality time.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Surprise visits are so awesome. And I know that it's hard that, I have family still in New York as well. And
Yeah.
I know it's really, really hard having that separation. So having that surprise just sounds so much like so awesome. I wish I was there to just see how it all played
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Guys, tell me if any of you do this. I might really sound like a crazy person. I don't know why in high school I used to do this. I would like stay up and watch videos on YouTube of soldiers coming home to surprise
Exactly
their
what you're
families.
saying.
Did anyone else do this, or was this I would just sit there. Why I did this to myself is beyond me. I would sit there for an hour
Mhm.
watching these videos with an entire tissue box, bawling my eyes out, watching soldiers come home and surprise their family members. And at some point, I would just be like, what is wrong with everybody?
That is not just a you thing. I have definitely done that, and because it's so heartwarming and
It's so
it's just so
heartwarming.
lovely, and you see, like, sometimes, like, the dogs going absolutely wild or their kids or
Yes.
wives or, family members. It just is all so heartwarming, and sometimes, even if it's, sometimes we just have a little bit of pent-up emotion too, and it's nice to release it and kind of promote to release it a little bit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't believe you just said that because I actually, and I'm remembering this now because I haven't done this in a really long time, but whenever I used to have clients who dissociated a lot or disconnected a lot and had a really hard time sitting in their emotions, one of the homeworks I would give them is to watch either that type of video or a movie
Mhm.
that just brought up a lot of emotion for them to help them get to that place where they can release it. And so it's so interesting that you brought that up because I used to do that with clients on purpose.
Yeah, it's such a really great tool. And before we get into the topic, if anyone is interested, Rachel, I think we've talked about this before that, Dane Cook, the comedian, he
Yes,
has
the cry
the cry
video.
video. It's so worth watching it on YouTube and pulling it up. Just say Dane Cook crying. I'm sure you could pull it up. And he goes through in a very comedic way our tendency as humans that sometimes we just get it in us that we are not in a great place and we're on the verge of crying. So then therefore we create a reason to make us actually cry. And then it's like, well, then everything's, more intense and just ways to make yourself cry more. I mean, I cannot do it justice by any means, but it's so
It's
worth it.
hysterical. And
Hysterical.
it's really funny because that's also something I use in sessions a lot where
Mhm.
I'm talking to clients about, the compilation of negative thoughts, how a lot of the time it could be great when you're having a hard time feeling something, but when you're in a dark place, how our brain has the tendency to like hold on to negative thoughts
Mhm.
even when it has literally nothing to do with anything. And it's just your brain almost wants to stay in that dark place.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a very comedic way of making you recognize what could be happening, where your brain is like, crying about something that happened 7 years ago. But my point is that, things that really are disconnected from you, that your brain is just trying to hold on to, things that aren't really upsetting to you in general, just because you want to stay in that dark place. But I think it is a little bit of a life lesson, that video of just that shared human experience. And he just does it such justice while making us pee in our pants. So
Absolutely. Humor is I know we recognize how great a role it can play in mental health and all, but I still think it's so underrated. I use humor so much in my own life. I use humor with my clients, but that could probably be a whole other session in and of itself. But today, to move to what the topic is, we wanted to talk about the goal, what the goal should be when we talk about mental health. And we are having such conversations in probably the last decade or so about mental health. And I don't know if we have a shared common goal that we can kind of put ourselves or point ourselves to that tells us, well, what is it that we're working on when we're talking about mental health and what is good mental health? there's this misconception, and these are some of the reasons that we wanted to talk about it, because there is a misconception that good mental health or healthy mental health, however you want to put it, means feeling happy all the time, or it means not experiencing uncomfortable or undesirable emotions. And that is certainly not the case. You may have heard of this idea of positive psychology, and it is a whole branch of psychology. And there's a lot of really great resources within that framework. However, the goal isn't about always being positive. It could be a tool to be helpful in resilience and mental health. And you might have heard the term toxic positivity, which basically would just boil down to the oversimplification of just don't worry, be happy, that type of mindset. And it's something that certainly is rampant in the mental health world, especially the self help world. I think we're getting a little bit better at identifying and recognizing that it can be very toxic to just have that type of mindset. So that's why I say positive psychology shouldn't be the goal. It should be a tool for overall mental health. In reality, mental health is also just boils down to resilience, which essentially means learning how to handle discomfort and navigate through tough emotions, not eliminate them. And that's a very big distinction in that. So, what we want to explore is a balance between changing emotions through our thoughts versus learning to sit with the discomfort, because it is twofold if we're making it a little bit more simple. So let's get into a little bit more about what is the goal of mental health and why it's important to understand this. So the goal that we need to understand, when we talked in earlier sessions, I know I had brought up and we talked a bit about knowing what our goals are for working in treatment. What are we working toward? And that is so important to define when we're talking about mental health as a society, and what it is as a collective mental health, and individually what our mental health looks like. So we want to have a good definition as to what that is. And I would encourage you to figure out what that might mean for you when we talk and bring all these topics in, when we talk about resilience, the balance between changing emotions versus learning to sit with discomfort. So we want to understand what that goal is so that we know we could track ourselves when we are working on that goal and how that progress is looking. Like I said shortly, a few minutes ago, that it's not just about feeling good. It's about developing skills to manage life's ups and downs. Like I said before in our check-in, when I was talking about the anxiety that I was experiencing leading up to and at my cat's vet appointment, that's something that I have experienced pretty much every single time I brought any of my cats to the vet. And I have I have learned to be able to handle that and deal with that instead of shutting down. Because sometimes when emotions get really high, our innate reaction might be to shut down or to avoid the emotions at all costs. And essentially, what I could say that's been helpful for me, and I'm a therapist, so we also experience things like this as well, and I know all the tools and all. So, one thing that was really helpful for me is just to identify and know. I'm like, I know I'm going to be anxious this week, and I know that it might be a bit tough, and I know why I'm anxious. And some of it is based in realistic fears, and some of it is based in just completely baseless in nothing, but it's something nonetheless that I feel. So when I noticed and I knew ahead of time that I would be feeling anxious, I was very mindful about what that week leading up would look like for me. And this is something that I would encourage anyone to do, is if you notice that you are struggling, or you know this is a tough time for you, maybe it's before you're going to go to the doctors, or maybe it's right before a really important presentation that you're anxious or nervous about, or you're worrying about getting results about something, whatever it might be, we have to acknowledge that that is the experience that we're going through. We have to recognize when there's times that I have to work on changing the thoughts and through the emotion, or change the emotions through the thoughts. I have to recognize that, but also when I have to learn to sit with it and what I could do with that. So going back to what I started saying, that leading up to that entire week, I knew that I was going to be experiencing heightened anxiety. So I said, okay, I'm going to be kind to myself. I need to understand that I'm probably not going to be as knocking things out of the park as I would like to. I like to be a productive person. I like to have all the goals. I like to have my to-do list. But I knew that sometimes I might also need that distraction as well. So I was trying to have grace with myself and saying that these are the things I like to do. And if I feel up to it, if I want to do it, if I need a distraction, then I can do it. But also at the same time, everything that I had to do, I was able to still do. I still did all my sessions. I still did all the work that I have to do. We have to show up in certain ways, but I could be forgiving with myself in ways that maybe aren't as important for me to show up every single day for. So we need to learn how to balance it all out. I didn't eradicate the anxiety. I didn't give into the anxiety. We need to balance it out. And when I talk about challenging thoughts, we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. And then talking about emotional regulation, that's basically what this all boils down to, too. When we're talking about, okay, we are experiencing these emotions, how are we going to work on regulating them and making them something that we can work with and still do what we need to be doing in our lives?
I want to first talk about this concept of mental health in general. I think a lot of the time, similar to happiness, people and clients specifically look at mental health as a destination. Mental health is not a noun, it is a verb. We should constantly be working on mental health. It's something we constantly need to put action towards in order to sustain and in order to maintain and in order to manage. I think what a lot of people don't recognize is for those who are in counseling for a while, sometimes it's because that's part of their life's way of managing mental health. I think that what people don't realize is even in a mentally healthy person, you can have very mentally straining and mentally difficult days, even potentially mentally unhealthy days, right? And so let's talk about what that might look like. You're not going to win every mental battle. So, kind of how you just said, Steph, where in that moment you were not necessarily able to get rid of the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Anyone who suffers with anxiety, you're going to know it's not always going to poof into thin air. I always tell clients, I'm going to give you an array of tools to work through your anxiety. And guess what? You're still going to have times where none of that works and you're going to feel horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'm going to teach you is how to let that time pass and recognize it's temporary and that you are stronger than those moments that you feel horrible. And part of that is what it means to manage your mental health. It's not a place that we get to. It's not like this person is mental health. No,
Mm-hmm.
we're all going to struggle. We're all going to have bad days. You can have a day where you've been crying your entire, like the morning to night you were crying. That could have been a very mentally healthy day for you. You guys can be hearing and seeing people on Instagram seemingly having their lives very, very together, seemingly being very mentally in a good place. They could be absolutely horrifically in a mentally very low, dark space. And so, first of all, be careful how you're defining mental health and who you're using to be your examples of what mental health should look like. And don't be fooled that mental health means you have your life figured out and everything's perfect and everything's happy. That's not mental health. It's day in and day out fighting those little battles, fighting those large battles, and maintaining a level of functionality as you're doing that. And so, so much of this, and I would say most of this, is really your resilience and your ability to cope with different obstacles thrown your way. And so, how Stephanie said, she had this experience of needing to face something that was very uncomfortable for her, was very scary for her, something that for somebody else who did not have the proper tools might have just made them freeze, might have just made them not be able to take the cats to get the checkups that they needed and get, the care and treatment that they needed, right? So that would create a mentally unhealthy space, because now your life and the actions in your life are being a result of that mentally unhealthy space. And so making sure that we're able to navigate those hard times so that our life is not getting the short end of the stick as a result. And so, for example, I can look at myself and say, okay, I've been sick for a while. I have been having a chronic sinus infection for a hot minute. Steph is my witness. And it's very easy for me to be like, boo hoo, me. I've been sick forever. I should be in bed. Like, I'm not okay. Use it as an excuse. Um, Go into this mental place of what's wrong with me and I'm never going to get back. All the different things, depending on what you struggle with, your brain can take you on all different types of trips, right? So part of that is saying, okay, I need to find the balance between physically taking care of myself and mentally making sure that, I am getting out of bed in a way that's physically healthy for me, getting about my day, doing what I need to do, and pushing myself to a healthy limit. I think a lot of this is understanding. I guess this is where we're like spilling the tea, right? We're not avoiding the things that are hard.
Mm.
Steph and I are not the type of therapists that are like, oh, that's hard for you. Like, why don't you just stay in today? No,
Mm-hmm.
push yourself. You're strong. You're stronger than you realize you are. You can do it. Now, that obviously doesn't mean pushing yourself to places that are above your limits. That doesn't mean pushing yourself in ways that are unhealthy. What that means is don't be the victim of your circumstance. Don't be the victim of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to navigate your life utilizing your coping skills, utilizing your tools, utilizing the techniques to create a mentally healthy life. And that's why I say it really is a verb, because it's the constant management of these moments, of these tools being utilized, and really putting yourself in a space where you're setting yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is so interesting because the verb and noun thing that really got me. I never heard it put that way. I always thought, like, I've heard of the way that we talk about mental health is a journey, not a destination, but I'm 100% feeling that mental health is a verb.
I honestly just thought of it as we were talking.
Okay, so copywriting Rachel right now. I absolutely love
Whatever works.
that. But yeah, so we absolutely are not the therapists that want to enable giving into hard things. We need to be able to work with it and work through it. And that's really important for us, and developing that resiliency and not avoiding the hard things. To start, about the thoughts and emotions, how to manage them, and how and when to work on changing them. First, I think it's really important to distinguish what are thoughts and what are emotions and how they work together. So, going to the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is probably the most common known therapy type that people are aware of, in short, it's called CBT. It's basically based on this premise that we have thoughts and they influence our emotions, and our emotions influence our actions, and our thoughts influence our actions as well. However, I find that a lot of people struggle to know the difference between thoughts and emotions. And I think it's really important to understand then what comes next. So when we talk about emotions, like your emotions are valid, I absolutely 100% agree. But a lot of times we conflate that with your thoughts are valid. I can't tell you that if you're saying that you're sad, I can't say, well, you shouldn't feel sad. We can't say that your feelings are wrong. That's not something that would be helpful. That would be something incredibly invalidating and upsetting and just overall unhelpful. But what I can say is perhaps the thought that your emotion is based on, maybe there are some flaws in that. And maybe we need to understand what those thoughts are. And a lot of times they happen so quickly, we're not even aware of what our thoughts are. Sometimes we have a triggering event and then all of a sudden it makes us feel a certain type of way. And we're not even aware, because it's so quick, what thoughts actually triggered that emotion. So one thing that we want to ask is, okay, what are you feeling? Let's identify that emotion. And I have a handy dandy tool that I like to share with my clients that just has a grand list of emotions or feelings words, because in our society, I don't know about you, Rachel, if you find this, that we really have a poor working vernacular for feelings. Like, we have a couple of the basic emotions. Even as adults, we're not really well acquainted with different emotion words. And there's a lot of power in being able to identify that the intensity of the emotion, the type of emotion, and sad might be part of it, but it might not be really doing it justice. So there's a lot of power in identifying the actual emotion words. And
Mhm.
then from there, once we identified that, well, what is that emotion based on? What thoughts are you having? And that might take a little bit of diving deep into understanding what that might look like. And then we want to ask, okay, your emotions are valid, and I can also usually understand why you are having those emotions based on those thoughts. But are those thoughts valid? And something that I explain to my clients is that the way that our brains work, it doesn't like when we have missing information. So if this is a big example that I'm sure both of us, well, I know I have, and I'm sure Rachel has had this experience, where an easy example that a lot of people have is, I texted this person and they didn't text me back. They must not like me anymore, or they're mad at me. And instantly it's like, well, where did that come from? Like, why is that
Mhm.
your deduction? Did you guys get into an argument? No, it's just they didn't respond and they must be mad at me. So what's actually happening there is, the facts are that you texted your friend, they didn't respond to you, or you texted whoever, they didn't respond to you. And the missing piece is why they didn't respond to you. And what we do and what our brain does is says, what fits best in our belief system? And let me insert that into, because this makes the most sense for me. So if you are someone that struggles with feeling that people don't like you, or thinking that people don't like you, that your knee jerk reaction is probably going to go to that deduction, that what it must be because they're mad at me. What I would ask is to, let's slow this down a little bit. What else could be true? Is there any other possibility, even if you don't believe it? Is there any other possibility that could fill in those blanks that might also work? We could say, maybe that person was busy and, they forgot to message you back. Maybe they're going through something themselves. Maybe their phone is not working right. Maybe their phone died. Maybe they're driving. There could be a million and one different ways. I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I'm not the greatest texter. Sometimes I get very distracted, so that if someone texts me and I open it up, I really wish there was a button that says mark as unread, like it does in our emails, because if I get distracted, I might.
Because a lot of time we don't actually read
Yeah,
it.
yes,
It's
exactly.
just like an initial reaction to open it, but you're not actually reading it.
Yes. Or you get distracted and then I forget to respond. And then I feel so
Mhm.
terrible that someone might be deducing that I'm
Totally.
mad or something like that. So there's other things that could be true. And a lot of times we probably won't actually figure out what actually happened. But more than likely, there's other reasons that could be true other than just what fits into your belief system. So first, we want to ask ourselves, what is my emotion? Then what thoughts are these emotions based on? And then if you can challenge those thoughts, see if there's something else that might be true. Sometimes that also will impact the emotions as well. But let's say that you are experiencing an emotion based on something, and we've deduced that, okay, this is valid. Like, let's say you walked in front of your class and you tripped and you feel embarrassed. I think most people probably would feel embarrassed. But that needs to be something, and an appropriate response to that might be some embarrassment, but is the level and intensity of your embarrassment, does that really match the event? Because I know that even as a therapist, if I start tripping in front of people, I'm going to feel embarrassed. But where it might start to be a little bit more irrational or too intense and not appropriate anymore for the situation is, it's 10 hours later and I'm still thinking about it as if it just happened. I'm thinking that all these people are thinking about me and wondering and worrying, or wondering or laughing at me. this now sounds like it's no longer an appropriate emotion. And that's something that we need to identify. All right, this emotion might be reasonable, however, the intensity might not be. So we have to recognize that and work through that a little bit more. So those are some ideas as to how to change, or how we might approach changing your thought process to help influence your emotions. Another way is recognizing negative self-talk, which a lot of us have, and some more than others, and reframing that. So let's say you got a not so great grade on a test. You might say, "Oh, I'm just such a stupid person." But there's other things that we could say as well that's probably not as destructive or hurtful, and also much more helpful and probably more valid as well, is that I didn't do so well on that test. Maybe I didn't study as much as I had wanted to, or maybe I should have studied more, or math is just not my strong suit and I need to study more, and I can recognize that now. Maybe I was just really not focused. I didn't get a good night's sleep. I just didn't do well. And that's okay to say that in ways that are very different and would create a very different emotional experience than just saying, I'm stupid, I can't do this, why do I even try? Those, and if you even just say those two different approaches to yourself, you're going to have a different emotional. I feel it right now, just even saying it. It feels very different saying such nasty things or not so nice things about yourself versus a little bit more objective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Taking it at face value versus internalizing it.
yes, yes, that's a really great way to put that. And another thing that we could do, and this is not a whole holistic list or anything like that, but something else is practicing gratitude and perspective shifts. And that's a little bit along the lines of what I had just said, is coming at it from a different angle. And what you just said, coming at it from more at face value instead of internalizing it, and not also making it your identity. Sometimes we screw up. Sometimes we don't perform as well as we'd like. Sometimes we say the wrong things. Sometimes we're not nice. Sometimes we say something that's mean. That doesn't make us a mean person. It doesn't make you a stupid person. We have to have forgiveness and kindness with ourselves as well. And what really our goal is to, once we recognize that these emotions or these thoughts are unhelpful, altogether the goal would be is how do we change these thoughts to help regulate the emotions. And that's really what all this comes down to. This is a lot about CBT, but then there's also the time that we need to recognize the discomfort and sit with that.
Another thing, in addition to CBT, that some certain clients feel is extremely helpful is also acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which is a lot of mindfulness, radical acceptance, which also, by the way, is dabbles in DBT as well, especially with the mindfulness piece. But this is really when we learn to sit with it not being okay. And what I always tell clients is like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to just sit there and say, okay, right now I'm really, really anxious. Right now I'm really, really scared. Right now I'm really, really sad. I'm in a really dark place. Like, what do I do with this? Instead of trying to push it away, instead of trying to numb yourself, instead of trying to distract yourself, sitting there and saying, this is kind of how Steph said, identifying this feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and then recognizing where and why that's coming from. So you do have that insight as to what is going on for you, and practicing different thought tools to kind of help you recognize that this is something that will come and go. Sometimes I remember, Stephanie, we used to run group. We used to utilize the tool of visualizing it as a cloud a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see this cloud come in, the cloud represents a certain thought or emotion, and you just allow it to pass by. It doesn't have to be any intense thoughts or intense actions taken. It's just this ability to recognize that you are stronger than this passing thought or this passing feeling. And mindfulness really also being exactly what it sounds like, even to the point of meditation. If that's going to help you, sitting in that physically, meditating on it, praying on it, practicing a yoga, practicing guided imagery, anything that's just going to kind of help you sit in that and deal with it as it's, you know, as it's coming over you and washing over you. Utilize that. Sometimes I tell clients, like, okay, your anxiety isn't going anywhere. Let's just sit with it. Like, grab a heat pack, grab a cup of tea, light a scented candle. None of those things are going to make your anxiety poof into thin air,
Mhm.
but they kind of help you sit with it. They help it be a drop less miserable and help you recognize on a mental standpoint, this isn't going to be here forever. And I don't have to take this and mentally go to an even worse place, deciding, oh my gosh, I'm not okay. Oh my gosh, I'm going crazy, right? It's okay that we're having these human experiences that are feeling very overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um, it is really important to recognize that as beings we have the capacity to feel things so deeply, and the courage to feel them, and also the knowledge to understand that they will come and go.
Mhm.
Even the most painful emotion of like grief, I would say, when people are in the lowest of lows, will tell you that eventually it's something that comes and goes. It comes in waves, is what people will tell you. It
Mhm.
will come in waves. And so, having this understanding of yourself and this understanding of how emotions work in general, finding peace and comfort in the fact that, like a cloud, this is going to flow on by,
Mhm.
and accepting that. And that's really where the radical acceptance is. It is exactly what it sounds like. Just accept that and be okay with it.
Mhm.
We're not saying you should like it, because nobody likes to feel that way, but just accept it as a part of life. Like every single morning, sometimes I have to get up at hours that I don't want to get up. I accept it. It's a reality.
Mhm.
Having feelings that feel icky are going to be a reality in our lives. And the faster we accept it, the easier it's going to be. I kind of think of it as like, if you ever go to get like blood work or something, a lot of times they tell you if you squeeze, it's going to hurt more. It's going to be harder for the needle to go in.
Goodness.
Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I think about it. If you just like relax, yeah, it's not the best feeling to have a needle inserted, but like it'll go, it'll come out, it'll be over, and that's it. And it's just kind of have to sit with that. I'm sorry if that gave anyone the heebie
Sorry, it gave
jeebies.
me the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, no.
After I was saying it, I was like, it's giving me the
Yeah.
heebie jeebies. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you have toddlers and you're like in the vaccine era. This is like my brain
A
24/7.
lot of needles.
But yeah, it's just like sometimes I want to tell my kids, like, if you stop fighting, it won't be this like
Right,
traumatic.
right.
But they're too young. They don't understand
I
that.
know.
So, just recognizing that suppressing your feelings is not going to get you anywhere. It's just not. It's either going to build up into something so much worse, or it's going to turn into who you are and the actions that you portray in a way that is really not cute, and you're really not going to like, and you might not even realize where that's coming from. It sounds like, some of our takeaways really in terms of building resilience is potentially journaling. So, really identifying our thoughts and emotions, whether that's in your mind through journals, meditation, whatever that is, grounding yourself. Again, whether it's using mindfulness, utilizing um, whether that's actually meditating in a certain moment, recognizing what's going on for you, being able to be in tune with your thoughts and emotions in that time, um, and creating really an understanding of yourself and the world around you in that moment, and finding really that middle ground, finally, of acceptance and action. So, accepting this is the situation, this is how I'm feeling, it's going to pass, I'm going to be okay, and then taking the necessary actions to really help you manage that space. And so, just understanding, as a final thought, really, that mental health is about the flexibility, going with the flow and balance of life's ups and downs. It's not going to look perfect. It's a constant action, it's a constant verb of this management space, of this taking action, of pushing ourselves, of recognizing our resilience and putting it to use and putting it to work, and understanding that that's not always going to look like sunshine and rainbows. And you could be a very mentally healthy person in a very mentally healthy space and have a day where you're bawling your eyes out, and that's
Mm.
totally okay. That doesn't mean that you're not mentally well. That being said, it can also be a really wonderful day, and that doesn't mean anything either, right? So just understanding that this is a way of taking care of yourself and managing your life and how you interact with the world around you as life's waves go up and down. And that's just a constant day in, day out job that you always have to be working at.
And we're just going to take a moment to answer our listener question. And before we do that, just another reminder that if you want a chance to have your question answered in one of our sessions, please send us over a message on Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast, or you could send an email to coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. And the question for today is, what are your thoughts on affirmations? Do you want me to start, or you want to start? All right.
Go for
So
it.
I have very positive feelings toward affirmations. I really do recommend them. And the thing that I would say is affirmations feel really weird when we start them. And there's a whole lot of things I could say about affirmations. So I'm really trying to make this as succinct as possible. But one of the things that I find that a lot of people experience when talking about affirmations or trying to do affirmations for the first time is that they feel a discomfort because they feel as though they're lying to themselves, because it's such usually at odds with what your current belief system is about yourself. And my response to that is, you probably didn't have all these beliefs about yourself and telling yourself this story about who you are or what you don't like about yourself. You probably didn't always have those beliefs. But what happened was that you had, and through telling yourself a story that you're whatever it is, insert whatever negative beliefs you have about yourself, you have told yourself that so much that you have learned to believe that about yourself. So with affirmations, it's doing the opposite. It's doing the same thing, but just in reverse. It's using the same tactic that made you go into this belief system to begin with, but in order to build a better and more productive and realistic belief system about yourself. So affirmations are going to feel weird at first. And what's important is maintaining consistency with it and doing it often, at least once a day, I would say. And we could talk more if you have more questions about how to implement that. We could certainly talk more about it and what they actually look like. But that is my brief view. I'm a big fan of affirmations.
Yeah. Affirmations honestly make me think of mantras, even though I know they're two different things. But I'm obsessed with mantras. And I also do love affirmations. And I think you said
Yeah.
it beautifully that a lot of the time with affirmations, the kicker is that it can feel weird. It can feel weird to utilize. It could feel weird to say, but they can be not even they can be, they empirically proven are incredibly strong tools to, utilize positive self-talk and practice positive psychology and really just create a stream of healthy thoughts in your mind versus the
So big
negative
fans over
voices that are
here.
playing. So love affirmations, also love mantras. But yeah, big fans over here. So let's just wrap everything up. So we just really want you guys to ask yourselves, what's one way that you can approach your mental health differently this week?
We apologize for the abrupt end to the recording. Unfortunately, the recording had cut out, but we're so grateful that you had joined us, and we hope that you'll tune back again next Tuesday when our next session drops. Please be sure to submit your questions or feedback over on our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast, or you can email us over at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to joining you again next week. Thank you so much for being with us today. Please follow our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast and send any questions you have about any topic to us via direct message for a chance for your question to be featured in one of our next sessions. You can also email us your questions or topic suggestions at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to check out some of our other sessions available to you right now. Once you drink up all of those and your coffee, come back next Tuesday for our next session.
The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute therapy or mental health advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship between you and the hosts. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care. We do offer individualized therapy. If you're interested in individual therapy with one of us, please visit our practice websites and send us an email to set up a free consultation call. All of the links and our contact info will be in the show notes.